Hello everybody, I am Zenith Rule, and welcome back to the Disney debate, where dogs and cats come together to drive cars and other things related to Shaggy Dogs. In other news, we're here once again to debate the Disneys. Once again, joining me today, I have Kat Macberrie.
Hello.
And Y2 Staller in this corner.
Hey, y'all.
And yes, it's been a while since we've done our little debate. We've had a little bit of busy schedules. I know on my end I've had a few things going on. I've had a lot of reviews that I've been prepping and editing. But also, in addition to all of this, I'm planning my trip over to Chicago next week. I'm going to visit Farad and the Channel Awesome people over there. So hopefully we'll see something out of that. Maybe some videos. Who knows? I don't. But I'm going over there, and I'm going over to Minnesota that same week to see Linkara. It's going to be a very, very big week. So I've been planning that. And there's also other things going on with work. So I've been kind of tired lately. And the last time we tried to record about 2 weeks ago, I was like dead tired. I fell asleep. So I'm sorry for that. We've also had other personal things happening behind the scenes that we're not going to get too much into. But we're back. We're shaggy, and we're very dog-like.
Speak for yourself. I'm a cat.
I am a very, very cat-like person, although that cannot be proven scientifically. But in any case, we are here, if you haven't guessed already, to talk about a Disney film called The Shaggy Dog. And this is one of the final films in the 50s.
In the beginning of a new golden era. The era of talking animals in live action with magic and other cool shit. Especially dogs driving cars.
Dogs driving cars, cats and dogs getting along. It's a crazy thing.
Mass hysteria.
This is the last film that we have for the 50s, and once we're done, we'll be done with an era. Unfortunately, we have a lot of films to cover before we can even complete this era, because what we normally do in this case is we review the sequels immediately afterwards. Well, The Shaggy Dog has a ton of sequels.
Oh boy. It sure does. Like, I don't even think we could find everything, could we?
We found most of them.
We found most of them. The thing with The Shaggy Dog is it has 5 total films. It has 2 original films back in the 50s, and one was like, it wasn't in the 50s, but it was like right afterwards. There were 2 made-for-TV films, one which we could not find, and then there was a 2006 remake. So there's a lot here, and so since we're covering them all, we have 4 films before we finish up this era. Hence, we are beginning the Shaggy Dog Marathon, or Shaggy Dog Month, as I technically call it, even though it's not a month. We're probably going to have 2 months to cover all of these films.
That's fine with me. I want to see more talking dogs.
The Shaggy Dog is a franchise that I really didn't know much about going into it. I've heard things about it, but it was one of those things that, you don't really know too much about. It's like, It's kind of like with one of those old-timey films that you may have seen like clips from when you were younger, or like heard somebody mention it in casual conversation. But when you actually like think about it, you don't know anything about this franchise or this film. And that's my same thing with the Shaggy Dog. I had no knowledge going into this film or the franchise, aside from the 2006 trailer with Tim Allen, and that kind of looks stupid. So you could understand my skepticism going into this, whether or not it would be good. What we got for the original 1959 Shaggy Dog was both weird but strangely amazing at the same time.
At the same time.
At the same time. It's strange because looking back, we've had a lot of older films that had that by all rights we either shouldn't like or shouldn't work. This is one of those films, but at the same time, it is so out there that I cannot help but loving most of it. And we're going to get into it. But before we start, why don't you give them a little bit of history about Shaggy Dog, or just let them know a little bit about what this film is.
Well, The Shaggy Dog is a movie about the two kids from Old Yeller who decided to move to the suburbs, and well, their family, well, they're the same two kid actors from Old Yeller, ironically, and them and their mother and father, they live in the suburbs, and this is actually the first Disney film that's live action. Well, yeah, the first live action Disney film that we've seen in a while where it actually takes place in modern day, like modern day of when the film was released. So it's different.
No more frontier films.
Yes, my God, no more frontier films. But so so the older kid, he's really smart and can build stuff. He builds in the beginning of the film, he builds a rocket in the basement of the house, and it shoots out.
Builds a fucking rocket. Oh my God.
And it's never mentioned again. It never mentions it again about him building a rocket through the basement, and it just shoots out through the house. So after all that shenanigans, at one point he sees there's this family that moves down the street, and what happens is the kid starts falling in love with the daughter of the household. So him and there's this other kid, they're rival, they're kind of trying to win the affection of the girl, and her father works for a museum, and they go to this museum, and they're in this ancient exhibit or whatever, and they talk about the Borgia family from Renaissance Italy, about how they kind of dabbled into black magic, and they were trying to find ways being able to transport their souls into other stuff, and that's where the Shaggy Dog comes in, because apparently they have this ancient ring that allows them to transport themselves into the dog. It's kind of a weird yet interesting way of how they go about it. So basically, it's all about the kid who turns into a dog every so often. They don't really just, it's like a timed thing. It's not like under the full moon or anything like that, like a werewolf. It's he turns into, every so often he'll all of a sudden his hair will turn into, will get all frizzy, and his hands will have paws, and wait, what's going on? And then he turns into a dog.
When you think about it, this film is actually the less gory, less scary, more kid-friendly version of the Wolfman.
Yeah.
It's an American werewolf in America.
That doesn't even make sense.
Or like an American teenager in America.
In America.
There are a few things I would like to address just right off the bat. First of all, the Borgia. When did this become Assassin's Creed? Because he goes into the museum and they start talking about the Borgia, and I only know of them because of Assassin's Creed, and they just say, oh, they're witchcraft and stuff like that. I'm like, no, they're not witches. They have ancient technology.
They're trying to find the Apple of Eden.
That aside, I think another thing to address here is that the transformations are extremely cheap and extremely cheesy, but nobody notices that he's changing into a dog every single time. It's kind of weird that way, because when you look at it, like comparing this to American Werewolf in London, which why I brought it up earlier, that transformation sequence is iconic because it had so much practical effect and so much makeup and so much work behind it that like it got the director so much more work. Like, that is one of the big scenes. And you compare it to this, and yes, this is way earlier, not even the same decade, but I mean, even just comparing it to that, like, it is so obvious that they just like glued hair to his face or something like that. It's so off.
Yeah, it is like so weird. Like, he looks like he just got out of bed. That and he just had like it's like his pillow burst all over his head.
Kind of like me in the morning.
Yeah, it is like it's they don't even do like a gradual effect. It's like you see one scene of him with the white hair, then they cut away, and then you go back and suddenly he has a black nose, then they cut away, and then suddenly he has more hair on his face. It's like, dude, really, Disney? I mean, I know you're still recovering from the war and whatnot, but you didn't have enough money to afford decent decent makeup jobs. Like, come on, you're better than this.
Maybe much of their budget went to the animation thing that they had in the beginning, that stop-go animation, which was actually pretty cool, but, like...
I know, it's like, they could have done something like that. But no, they had to go the cheap way. And actually, the one thing about this I didn't even realize, because, like, I had never watched this before either, but when I first saw this, like, I totally expected the kid to transform into a dog. What I didn't expect, however, was that he apparently not only transforms into a dog, but he possesses the body of a dog. How does that work?
There is an actual dog in the film, the dog that the girl that he and his best friend are trying to woo. Like, it's her dog, and he essentially possesses the dog. So then why is there a transformation sequence? Like, if you're going to be that cheap with your budget, why not just have him, like, make a sound effect, have him, move into the dog, like a ping effect or something like that, where his spirit goes in there or something. He's supposedly possessing the dog, but he also becomes the dog, which is weird, and he can never control when this happens. It just happens at random. But he'll just be doing things, and then all of a sudden, like, they'll cut away and they'll cut back, and he'll start having a little bit tufts of fur. He'll cut away, he'll cut back, he'll have more. And I'm just like, I'm reminded of the movie that Spoonie reviewed, where the magic trick, is so amazing, they just cut away before the reveal of this trick, so that it's kind of obvious. Like, there's no suspension of disbelief that this is real with this editing.
Yeah, and plus the terminology is confusing as well, because in the film they claim that it's metamorphosis, and that and that the boy is a shapeshifter, and that's why he can do this. But it's like, no, if he is possessing the dog, and as he's changing into him, that's possession. Like, I don't understand why they think it's shape-shifting. And like, I know that they have to get the dog out of the way in order for it to make sense that he, goes into her house and, hangs out with her and infiltrates, certain things later on in the film, but none of that stuff made sense. Like, I don't understand why they couldn't make it so that, they switch bodies. Like, the dog possesses the boy's body while he's in the dog's body. I mean, that would have made more sense. And I like, they even hinted that the dog, which is apparently a rare breed, apparently like was owned by the Borgia family. You even see me in a painting, so it kind of gives you like a sort of dark foreshadowing. It's like, what if this dog has lived all this time and he's, sustained his life by basically switching bodies with people, just switching back and forth whenever it's convenient for him.
What if the dog is a witch?
See, that would have been cool. That would have been a nice twist. But no, it's like, oh yeah, he transforms into a dog, but he also possesses the dog. It's like having your cake and eating it too. It just doesn't make sense.
By the way, this whole plot point of him turning into a dog and going back and forth, well, it takes about 75-80% of the film. It is never resolved. Never.
Nope. This isn't even the B plot. This is like the C plot. Like, they spent 15 minutes trying to figure out, oh, how am I going to transform back from the dog, only to have like the scientist guys say, oh well, there's really no way of curing this. I mean, I suppose you could do it this way, but for now, just deal with it and live your life as normal. Okay.
And as we were watching the film, we're like, okay, he's gonna be a dog forever. But he starts climbing something, he falls down, and then all of a sudden he's human again.
Yeah, he transforms when the plot needs him to, basically. If we need conflict or a funny moment or whatever. It's like, there's no rhyme or reason. It's completely random and it makes absolutely no goddamn sense. Like, you think at the very least they do like a Ranma thing where it's like, oh, if you get water on him, then he transforms, or oh, if he's out in the nighttime, then he transforms, something like that. But no, this is just, okay, now he's a dog. Okay, now he's a boy.
There's not even like a Freaky Friday thing where there's like a fortune cookie or something that transforms him. Like, he just puts on a ring and then automatically just happens. And he took the ring off during the film and he still transforms. So like, I guess he's gonna be cursed like this for the rest of his life. But even though this is like the crux of what the film is supposed to be about, this isn't really what the film is about, which is odd. The film spends a lot of time with him and his best friend as they both try to date two different girls. Which,
at the same time.
Let me just say that both of these characters are dicks. The main character, Wilby, is kind of arrogant and cocky, and his best friend just does everything he can to steal any girl that Wilby tries to woo. So both of these characters are not likable in the slightest, which is odd because back when I was watching Old Yeller, I liked this actor so much more than the other one, but Wilby's little brother is played by Arliss, and he's actually acting well in a likable character.
Granted, he's a dumbass character, but he's still way more likable than Wilby is.
So, they basically start the girls fighting over each other for each boy.
Yeah, it's like they started off with like, a supernatural comedy, then put on the brakes and made it into like a teen comedy. It's like, for a while, like, I almost forgot. It's like, oh yeah, we're supposed to be watching the Shaggy Dog, aren't we? And I gotta love the whole setup too. Like, as you mentioned, the two guys, they're after two different girls at two different times. First, they're after like the resident, hot chick, played by Annette Funicello in her first role, since the Mickey Mouse Club. But then the neighbor girl moves in, and suddenly they're both fighting over her. And then when it comes time for this dance, the Wilby's friend decides to pull a Barney Stinson, take a play out of the playbook, and he invites both girls to the dance, but he fools them into thinking that the other one is with Wilby, making up excuses and stuff, saying things like, "Oh yeah, he's just so shy and stuff. I told her, to make sure that she's nice to him," and basically playing each other. And it's like it is like the most dickish thing, and the most stupid thing, but it works. I don't understand how it works.
Challenge accepted. I don't understand how it works either, but like somehow these people manage to be extremely dickish to each other, and then in the middle of the dance he transforms into a dog, with nobody noticing in the middle of the dance floor that something is changing. Even when he starts having like paws for hands, even when like his hair starts changing. I mean, maybe they're engrossed with the dance, but it's weird, and this subplot goes nowhere because nobody gets any girl at the end of the film. So it's kind of there. I guess mostly to explain why he's turning into a dog, but then why make it a large portion of the film? Eric, what do you think of this entire subplot? Like, what?
I'm surprised that the subplot was basically almost like the main plot of it. In fact, we don't really get to the real main crux of the story until we get to like the third act of the film. But like it feels like that should have just been the side plot. It really shouldn't have been the main plot. It was weird how they decided to showcase that instead of the other thing, which is when things really get interesting. To kind of transition over into that, so by the third act of the film, we find out that the daughter the girl who has the Shaggy Dog, who's the owner of the Shaggy Dog, turns out that her father is secretly a Russian spy who is trying to get information about a top secret military project, like some top secret missile plans or whatever. And Willis, as the Shaggy Dog, overhears this and is trying to warn everybody. He warns his father, he warns his brother, and he tries to tries to get both of them to go to the military base to try to warn them about the Russian spies. We need to stop the Russians. We got to stop them. They're stealing the plans. And then the father gets detained because they think he's crazy because a Shaggy Dog told him who was his son. And then they're all like, "Wait, what?" And they they give him to a psychiatrist to look at him. But
that's the other B/C plot of the film, is the fact that he has to hide from his father, who hates dogs with a passion to the point where he is actually willing to shoot them on sight.
Yeah, really. Animal cruelty.
The father is barely in the film, though. Like, he has maybe 2-3 scenes about him, but the movie...
But he's featured prominently.
The just looking at the cover art right here, Wilby is not on the cover of the film that I have in my hand. But his father is center stage, and that's weird. Side note before I continue this thought, this is actually the first physical copy of a Disney film that I've bought for the debate. Because finding the 1959 film anywhere else is kind of hard. So I actually managed to find a classic DVD reprint of the 1959 movie that comes with the Shaggy DA as well. So yeah, this is the first of my Disney collection, which is an odd start to begin with.
Not really, not necessarily a bad thing, because I mean, we're at the Shaggy Dog. We're at the end of the 50s. Wait till we get to the 60s stuff. That's especially with the live action stuff. That's when it really gets interesting.
But back on that original thought. Sorry, I just wanted to bring that up because I actually haven't gone out and bought a film for this show until now because I've been able to find them on YouTube or through some other means. But my original thought of, yeah, his father is barely featured in the film. They set him up in the beginning saying, oh, he hates dogs. And then at the end of the film, he starts liking dogs because dogs save the day. And there's one other scene where his son, Arliss, that Arliss isn't the son's name, it's just Arliss is the one playing him.
His name is Moochie.
Moochie. That is such a weird name. But Moochie tells him about this spy plot. So they go to the government or the police. It's not very clear who they go to. Possibly the FBI, but they don't have like any uniforms or badges for us to really tell. He goes to them, and he explains that the Shaggy Dog told him. And he tells them inside information about this plot that he should know. And instead of detaining him, they bring him to the psychiatrist, which I can kind of understand why they would do that. But he continues to say insider information, and his son throws him under the bus. Moochie basically said, oh no, I made that stuff up, but he's the one who's insane. So his father is detained for questioning, and somehow he's let out. I was for sure thinking that they would either like blacklist him as a communist or something, because that's what they would do back then.
Yeah, this is still the Cold War.
Yeah, but then he wouldn't be there for the climax.
Yeah, the stuff with his father is kind of weird and really just kind of tossed in there. The whole ending spy plot comes out of nowhere. Like, as we're dealing with him...
It's just there to basically remind you that this film is from the 50s. Because this film basically is like a 50s, like, time capsule. Like, from the way everyone dresses, to how they talk, to, you know, the general, like, airness of, like, with, you know, Russian spies and communists and stuff. It is so 50s. Like, so 50s.
It's weird because there is no setup to this plot. We find out that the girl that the boys have been trying to date, the girl who just moved in, her father is apparently doing something criminal or whatever under the radar that he should not be doing. And it comes out of nowhere, like, in the last... Not even really the last third, because we only learn about this during, like, the last maybe 20 minutes of the film.
Yeah, really. And then all of a sudden, like, that's when, like the real, like, action-y stuff starts to happen, the father trying to warn everybody, and meanwhile, Willis, as the Shaggy Dog, is taking matters into his own hands, into his own doggy hands, paws, whatever.
It's like after they realize they dropped the main premise, and then we're like trying to tell like a teen comedy. They're like, shit, we need some tension in this film. Communist, go save America, Shaggy Dog.
But the thing is, this last third of the film saves it. Because
Yes.
It is so ridiculous, so out of left field, so crazy that it just, you have to see this film. I'm telling you now before we even finish this podcast. Pause this, go out, get the film, watch it. I don't care how you do it. It is worth seeing for this part alone, because there's several bits that are amazing. First is Well, there's this running gag throughout the film that whenever he's a dog, he tries going to the police for help. And he sees this one officer, and he starts talking to him, and then the officer, like, starts thinking he's crazy, but he doesn't believe it at first. The second time, however, he goes with his brother to this officer to try to tell them, and the officer thinks it's a prank.
The guy's face just when he sees the dog talking is just priceless. Like, I love how the actor conveys his confusion and fear over his own sanity. That is just perfect. That is just like perfect comedic timing to me.
If the entire film had been like this, him trying to hide it or trying to talk to people, I would have liked it a lot more, because this is genuinely great scenes, and what it builds to later on with this officer is fantastic. So get this. All right. They need to trace down the criminals. So, as a dog, Wilby goes and steals his father's car. Now, he starts driving down the road, and this same police officer sees it and starts chasing. So there's a car chase with a dog driving a car and a police car right behind them. Now, he calls in on the radio that they're chasing a shaggy dog.
Yes.
In the best part of the film. Just the way he calls it in on the radio, like, sorry, sir, we have a shaggy dog. It's like he doesn't even bat an eye. There's a shaggy dog driving this car. And like, they keep going with this joke to the point where, I think, yeah, they get stopped, right? And the police car gets stolen. Is it by the dog or by...
It gets...
The dog steals it.
Yeah, the dog steals it. Because then the dog steals the car, steals the police car, and because the police officers chasing the shaggy dog, they get stopped by another group of police officers who thought that the police officers were crazy. The first police officers were crazy. So then the shaggy dog sneaks out of the car, steals the other police car, drives off with the police car, and so the police officers are driving in the car that they were chasing to begin with.
And they get stopped too. Like, this whole sequence where, like, everyone's stealing cars, the shaggy dog is driving, the father is behind with another car. Like, this whole climax is just a comedic masterpiece. This is why they made the film, I think.
Yeah, this is like the ending of It's a Mad, Mad World. It is just so glorious. Just having everybody just racing toward a common destination and just doing the weirdest chase ever. The only line I knew from this movie, and it's still my favorite line of the film, is when after he steals his friend's car, and his friend goes over to the police officers, the ones that, the one that keeps seeing the dog but doesn't believe he actually talks, and he says, "Officer, after him! That shaggy dog stole my car!" I was like, wow. That's a sentence I never thought I'd hear in my lifetime.
It is amazing, and the officers, like, new officers, keep calling in that a shaggy dog stole a car, and like, it's one of those things that every single bit of it is absurdist, it's surreal, but it is amazing, and it needs to be seen to be believed.
Mm-hmm. That is why I made it my my Facebook picture. It's just, I love that scene so damn much. I can watch it over and over again. And I gotta say real quick, the dog that they use for the shaggy dog, like, he is very well trained. Like, they have him do a lot of things, a lot of human-esque things. And granted, some scenes it's obviously a puppet that's the dog, but for the scenes where it's actually the dog, like, kudos to the dog and the trainer. Like, they did a really fantastic job.
Yeah, they did a really great job with it. That was the one thing that impressed me the most, was how well the dog was able to maneuver around set and be able to do the things that that was to be done in the script. And it's probably one of the better animal trained movies that I've seen.
My second favorite part, aside from the dog driving, is when he gets dressed into his pajamas and then he starts brushing his teeth and gargling mouthwash. Because you see the dog standing up on his two back legs, hanging on the sink, and then like leaning his head back to gargle. It's just so great.
It is just really, really funny. And it, like, again, if the film had been all of this, it would be simply wonderful from start to finish. If it was more like this throughout the entire thing. As it stands, a lot of it is kind of fluff. You have all that stuff with the girls that we don't need. A lot of stuff with him changing into a dog and back that we don't need. Some random stuff with his father that just comes and goes. The spy thing comes out of nowhere. And then there's Arliss, or Moochie as he's called in this film, who sees his brother becoming a dog and tries to keep him as a pet.
Oh yeah, and there's also the fact that at the very end, there's absolutely no payoff to all this. Yeah, because apparently one of the things that the scientist said, like when talking to the kid about breaking the curse on him, was that, well, I suppose you can break the curse if you save another's life. So you're thinking, okay, well, obviously that's how he's gonna, break the curse at the end. And sure enough, he ends up saving the girl after her father tries to kidnap her. But his friend takes credit for it, and then the dog, like after he's cured and the dog reappears, the dog gets credit for saving her. And then for the newspaper, they credit the dog, the father, and his brother with saving America from communists.
But like they interview his father instead of Wilby. And his father is now loving dogs, and he's hugging this dog. And where did this change of heart come around? Because, I mean, granted, the dog saved the day, and they had this big thing. But the dog stole his car.
Well, no, he stole the friend's car. But, yeah, the change, like, first off, it's understandable why the father hates dogs. Because, A, he was a mailman, so, of course, he used to get attacked by dogs all the time. And, B, he's, I guess, apparently allergic. They're hinting it's more a psychosomatic thing, but yeah, like, he does have a good reason. The problem is he takes it way over the top, and he only changes his tune after he finds out that Wilby has been transforming into a dog. But it's like, as soon as he finds out, he faints, and then when he wakes up, he's like, oh, my son's a dog. Well, I guess I should go help him now. It's like, okay. Way to switch gears. Just like that. I mean, I'm glad you're supporting your son, but, little character development or something. Maybe feel bad that you almost fucking shot him.
Yeah. This film is all over the place. I feel like they knew what they wanted to do in terms of comedy for the dog and tried to build a movie around it, but it just didn't work. But even though this film is extremely all over the place, even though it has many subplots, far too many subplots, even though the third act comes completely out of left field, it is worth it for the bits that this movie was made for the stuff with the dog acting human. And I'm hoping the Shaggy DA has a lot more with that, because when it is actually about a Shaggy dog doing human things, the Shaggy Dog is a brilliant movie.
Yeah, like if it had gotten like a serious like rewriting, and it would definitely be a masterpiece. Like, just take plot A and keep it plot A, and maybe add a minor plot B, but keep it about the Shaggy Dog. Keep it about him, trying to break his curse and getting into shenanigans and stuff. And, maybe have it be a little, there be a little emergency like, oh, he has to break the curse by this point, or he'll be a dog forever, or he has to learn a valuable lesson. Because that's one thing I noticed. Like, they set up this film like making it so that Wilby has to learn a lesson in that, he saves the girl he loves, and that's what breaks the spell on him, but he does it and nothing is learned. Nobody learns a lesson in this at all.
He doesn't even get credit for saving, like he doesn't tell the story about how he became a dog and how through being a dog he was able to save the girl, but nobody mentions that.
Yeah, and it's not even about, him learning to love or being less of a dick or anything. It's like he and his friend go right back to chasing the same girl at the end. And thank God she, turned them both down. But yeah, it's like you went through all that and it's like you're pretty much the same as when you started off in the film.
Everyone is a dick from start to finish. Everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I think one thing we should address before we get into our final thoughts, there are some strange casting choices. We already mentioned that, you have the two main stars of Old Yeller and Savage Sam. We also mentioned the Mouseketeer. But there's another strange casting choice. Jean Hagen is the mother, who's barely in the film, but you may have heard her in something completely different. Singing in the Rain. Yeah, Lena Lamont from Singing in the Rain is the mother in The Shaggy Dog. It's just strange to me because you go from something like Singing in the Rain, which took place before The Shaggy Dog, and you have this character who's very, very different. And then you find her playing a 60s, archetypal mother figure. If I were a casting director, maybe she had something different on her resume. I don't know too much about the actress, but that's kind of a big stretch to go from one to the other, don't you think?
I just felt she was wasted in this film. You could have had anyone else play that, because she plays the typical disgruntled housewife from the 50s and 60s. You could pretty much take anyone who's you could take the wife from the Honeymooners, you could take Wilma Flintstone, you could take anybody and just put them in that role. I just really felt she was more wasted than anything.
You could have just taken the mother from Old Yeller, but that would have been too on the nose.
Yeah, and the thing I love too is how, like you said, how prominently the father's featured in marketing and stuff. But the thing is, his big role was actually in The Absent-Minded Professor, which wouldn't come till years later. So it's kind of like what they did with their movies that star Kurt Russell when he was a kid. It's I guarantee you he was not in the marketing in the early days, and now they're advertising the hell out of him just because he becomes a big name later. It's just funny.
So, strange casting on top of everything we've talked about. Anyway, let's start with Eric for final thoughts on this film.
It is definitely a very weird film, but a weird kind of good film. Because it does have some comedic stuff, but I wish they would have had more gags. I was kind of expecting more shenanigans, but there's some really, really funny parts when they do the stuff with the dog, hiding the dog, and people, and the talking when the dog actually talking and the police officers freaking out. When they do that bit, that's the movie at its strongest, is when it does those type of gags. But then everything else just kind of falls apart, just kind of falls flat a little bit. So the laughs are there, but they're hidden in knee deep in other subplots and stuff, and that's kind of what bogs the movie down a bit. But it's worth it just for those laughs that we do get.
All right, and Kat, what are your final thoughts on the film?
Honestly, I love the hell out of this film, if only for the comedic bits. I do agree with Eric. Like I said, the comedy is really what saves this film. Like, just the timing, the facial expressions, the acting, the whole scenario and setup to the big ultimate display of craziness that we witness is just, it's the most perfect thing about the movie. Like, everything else definitely needs, an upgrade or a rewrite or something, because the story's just way too cluttered. The writing is, you know, at times passable, at worst piss poor. The characters are intolerable, and honestly, like, they make the premise just too complicated for something that's supposed to be about a kid who gets cursed into becoming a dog. Like, this has been done millions of times since then, and has been done way better. But honestly, given what it is, given the time period it came out in, and given, what they did with the resources they had, I still think that this is a pretty good movie. And if you could ignore all the other stuff I just mentioned, if you're looking for just a wacky zany comedy like from the 50s, this is definitely the one to watch.
I have to agree with both of you guys. Like, when I first started watching this film with Kat, initially I was going to write this film off, but it really gets saved by a lot of the comedy with the dog, and by that climax, and by a lot of the stuff that they do with that premise. There's way too much fluff, but it is worth your time. It is a lot of fun. Even the parts that I didn't really care for or that dragged, I thought were good enough. They're much better than some of the bad, boring films we've seen before. It wasn't hard to sit through. So I definitely think it's worth your time, and I think it's worth your money, because if you just look on like Amazon or eBay or basically any movie site where you can pick something up, there is a dual pack. It's called Disney Classics. It has the first Shaggy Dog and the Shaggy DA. There's also another pack that has the Shaggy Dog, the Shaggy DA, the 2006 Shaggy Dog, and another unrelated film. And they're all $15, I believe, for the packs, which is an incredible deal when you consider what you're getting for that much money. So, again, this is the first Disney film that I have bought for the show, and I think my money was actually well spent. So, make of that what you will. With all of that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We are going to watch the Shaggy DA next time and see if that is better, worse, as good. Who knows? It could be all three for all I know. We're looking forward to seeing what that has in store for us. But anyway, I'm Zenith Rule.
I'm Kat Macberrie.
I'm Y2 Staller.
And this is the Disney Debate. We will see you next time. And just remember, folks, if you happen to see a Shaggy Dog driving a car, just call it in on your police radio. Don't worry. It'll all work out in the end.
Just tell him Dick Dastardly's driving with them, and they'll be on him like that. And now we're off to the races.
Thank you for watching the Media Meltdown. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome videos. And if you like what you see, show your support on the Patreon page at patreon.com/Media Meltdown. See you all next time on the Media Meltdown.
Hello, everybody. I'm Zenith Wolf. Zenith will mess up his legs.
Boop boop a doo.
Bloopers. Hi, this is me before we start recording, even though I'm recording on my end. My name is Zenith. Howdy, 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 howdy.